just give a bit of introduction. We're here to talk about food preservation and how that can support food security and I think most importantly food sovereignty. I know I've heard that a few times this weekend, the importance of food sovereignty, and if you're not too familiar, my understanding at least is that gives people more of a choice with their food and not just being handed a fish, but being taught how to fish, and they can continue to provide for themselves. And so this is Emma Burke. She is the market manager? Yeah. Market manager of Town's Harvest Garden here in Bozeman and at MSU. And I'm Amelia Libertor. I was on the board of Arrow, and I've just completed my term. So I'm on to other things, but I guess today I'm still on the board. So yeah, would you like to say some more about food preservation?
Yeah, so I think you got it pretty on the nose with the importance of food preservation and food storage in terms of food access and food security. A lot of those people that are food insecure in this country do rely on emergency food supplementation, so a lot of those foods are shelf stable. But there's also a really great opportunity for people, if they do have access to fresh vegetables or foods, which sometimes that they do at food banks, they can store those vegetables and so they can enjoy them for a longer period of time. And so today I thought it would just be really fun and helpful maybe if we all shared some techniques and ways that we like to store and process our food, because there's so many things you can do and so many foods that you can process. So we brought some examples here today of canned foods and foods that just store well on their own. You can also ferment foods and freeze foods. You can freeze dry foods. There's just, the options are almost unlimited. So yeah, if we all just wanted to go around and maybe say something about what we like to do, or if anyone has questions about ideas, that would be good too.
And I'll just say I brought notebooks if anyone wants to create since we wanted to make this a hands-on workshop, but unfortunately on campus we can't handle our own food or create food to be consumed. So if you want to take a notebook and make this as your food fermentation recipe book or journal, or take notes in it for this session specifically, you can. Yeah, so I think also another important piece is the skill sharing and skill, development and preserving the tradition of preserving food. and in terms of season extensions for us up in Montana, we don't have a very long growing season, so we can't be growing our tomatoes in December. And making sure that we have those fresh, nutritious vegetables year-round, instead of shipping them up from faraway places, or just to supplement. It even makes a big difference to put away some food so you're not always buying at the grocery store. It can be really cost effective. And I know some people have been talking about the loss of skills in cooking and especially food preserving. I didn't grow up preserving food at all at home, maybe a little bit of drying or freezing, but we really were shopping at the grocery store year-round, even though we did have a garden some years. And so food preservation has been a recent thing for me to get into and research and learn. And it can be kind of scary, there's a lot of, when I start Googling canning, everyone's like, oh, be careful of botulism, if you do it incorrectly, you can make yourself or others very sick. So I've found it intimidating to enter, but the more I talk to people about it and the more I learn, it becomes a very, like you were saying, there's so many ways to do it. It's a very flexible art form, and you can kind of find the ways that you like to do it best and create your own recipes with a little bit of practice. So one thing I've been doing this year is canning a lot of tomatoes. I've been working at Harlequin Produce this year, and so I end up with crates and crates of tomatoes that aren't good enough for market, but they're plenty good enough to put in a jar. So that's been my project this year, is tomatoes. Do you want to introduce yourself or share anything about your?
My name is Sky. I haven't been doing a whole lot of food preservation. I did take a canning class, which was really interesting and so tasty, and we did it as a community project kind of thing. So that really cut down on labor. But I'm interested in trying dehydrating. I live in a van and I don't have electricity, so I'm interested in solar dehydrating or checking that out.
Sweet.
Well, I'm John. I'm from Helena, and I'm neither a gardener nor a food preserver person. The reason I'm here, my career has been in wildlife management, but the reason I'm here is because my wife and I, after I retire in December, we're joining the Peace Corps, and I'm going to Tanzania. And I'm going to be doing sustainable agriculture work over there. Other than having worked on a ranch for a year or so, I don't know very much about agriculture or sustainable agriculture. So I'm here just to learn, and I think obviously this kind of fits in with sustainable agriculture. I don't know where we're going to be assigned in Tanzania, so I don't know the climate, I don't know any of that kind of stuff, but I suspect that in many cases it might be just small little plots that people have that they want to grow on. I don't think Tanzania has the large corporate agriculture like we have with GMO huge fields of wheat and that kind of thing. So I think it's probably going to be small community-based things that I'll be working with. So I'm just here as a sponge to learn.
I also don't have a lot of experience with preserving, but I've just recently started my first SCOBY to make kombucha, and so that's kind of like started to push me down into getting into fermenting and possibly making kimchi and things like that. So I definitely am just excited about learning about different techniques.
I just have a bunch of cork boards that I hang up in my kitchen, and if I buy herbs at the store, you could just dry your excess, or if you have friends with gardens or your own, it's just really easy to hang it up and put it in a jar and have tea or spices for the rest of the year. So.
And you can get a lot of spices out of a little
it's really flavorful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
I do a lot of drying and freezing, and I make a lot of kombucha. So I'm starting canning now. It's my next project. I'm interested to see where that goes.
I had plans to make chutney out of some of our plums that grow on our tree this year, but I didn't get around to it. I need a little bit of a kickstart.
It is a very time-consuming process, is what I've been learning. It's like, it's many hours in the kitchen sometimes, like for canning especially, but yeah.
You can get it down. I had a bunch of strawberries one time, and I could can and jar in 45 minutes. It was like, go. One of the things that we have is we've got a couple of commercial kitchens that people can rent by the hour in Missoula.
Yeah, will you introduce yourself then?
Yeah, Anne from Moonlight Kitchens. And we have 2 commercial kitchens and a workspace and storage. But we've had people who want to do solar drying, and that's a real challenge for the health department because it's outside. How do you keep pests out? How do you keep it clean? You have to get it from the solar dryer into the facility where you're going to package it, and that transition is, according to the health department, fraught with danger. But if anybody wants to design a solar dryer that would meet the health department regulations, I think there's a market.
I'm Brendan. I'm personally interested in sustainable ag. I would like to get more into permaculture, and canning would be a great way to store a lot of what I produce. I was a Peace Corps volunteer with sustainable ag and agroforestry, and if you want to talk more after this, I'd be happy to share my experience with you. But this is a great technique that you probably won't learn there, and so to bring this forward would be very innovative and helpful there. So kudos to you for being here, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what you guys have to offer and share. Happy to learn.
My name's Wes, and I come from a farm ranch background, and I work with Kristen and Emma over here at Towns Harvest, and grew up canning and freezing. I got really distinct memories of my mom getting like 30 dozen corn from the farmer and getting it delivered in a big pickup truck, and that would be our next 2 days, just husking and freezing corn. I've been doing some canning a lot with my wife over the past couple of years, but I think going forward I'd like to find out more about drying and curing meat. It's not something you hear a lot about, or that's not as prevalent of a practice as canning and drying.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary. I don't have a lot of expertise around this, honestly. I'm here to support the students and learn from them. I love good food, but frankly, at this point in my life, the time that I have towards food preservation is pretty limited, but I'm also committed to minimizing my personal food waste, so yeah, I feel like I'm at this tension point where I'm not doing enough around food preservation. I don't know where the time's going to come from.
My name is Diana, and currently we're dealing with harvest, with freezing, drying, fermenting. But we have a greenhouse and a root cellar is going to be completed within the year. And so I have questions about, that approach, because you're not using a whole lot of technology or carbon to make that work. But I know from some of the elders that I've visited their root cellars that you're supposed to store certain fruits and certain vegetables above or below one another because of the gases that they output when they're in storage. I'd like to learn more about that.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I've heard of that before. Gases coming out of the vegetables, it makes sense, I guess, but
Yeah. So you shouldn't like store like apples or plums with like your potatoes or something that would like sprout or do that. So yeah.
Good to know.
So our ancestors stored their food underground, so I'd like to learn more about that.
And good point about energy efficiency too. I mean, and time, you just stick it in there.
The thing I love to do is dry herbs because it's a sensual experience from the get-go, from the cutting to, the drying to the, disassembling and crushing. It's just wonderful. And to have your own herbs in your, your culinary pantry for the rest of the winter is wonderful.
I'm Kate, and I live here in the Gallatin Valley. Here most personally because I have 3 apple trees and friends with plum trees, and usually go out and get my choke cherries in the homemade yards. And so I literally have no space left in my freezer right now because all of my old Talenti containers have been filled with amazing sauces and berries. And there's sort of a limit to what my tiny little refrigerator freezer can hold. But I do come from a long line of farmers, cooks, and I remember as a child my mother canning, and my mother and my aunt in the kitchen for like days on end, and then they swore they would never do it again.
I'm Maddie, and this year I really did the first batch of canning that I've ever done, and I think I'm most curious about flavors because I got really eager and opened one of mine already, one of my pickles, and the flavors are a little off. Learning about how to make them tastes really good.
My name's Gilly, and I also am not really experienced in canning, but I'd really like to learn more about it. I think I also had like a fear about botulism and everything because everyone was be concerned. I tried to make jams and it didn't work out. So yeah, just would like to learn.
My name's Allison. I'm an SFBS student. I grew up doing some canning, like a lot of like jams and jellies and like occasional like sauces. And so I have a little bit of experience doing that, but then, like as I get older, I experimented more like with fermentation, and like I had a older neighbor who their whole family is really into like preservation, and they have a huge like 1-acre garden. And so he taught me a lot about like making like sauerkraut in like bulk crocks, to store in their root cellar, and like, having like cider parties where we go out in the orchard and bring all the apples we can find like in the neighborhood and like just make cider all day and like get really sick because you drink too much of it. So yeah, I think like the community part of it is really important because like a couple people have mentioned, like no one wants to spend all day in the kitchen by themselves like canning 40 boxes of tomatoes. And so I think, like the community aspect is really important, just having, like we were talking about in our last workshop, like work parties, and everyone gets something and everyone works and it's all done and it's fun and it's not just like drudgery. So
My name's Bob Quinn. I live in Big Sandy, 300 miles north of here, and I'm reaching a time in my life where I'm starting to have more time, and that's my goal. And the last few years, my goal has been to grow everything I eat and try to eat everything I grow. I grow more than I can eat, of course. Have that kind of variety. I'm up to probably more than 85% of what I eat now is from our farm. And things that we grow. I have a great root cellar I had a lot of success with. We have a little white mold that destroys my shelving, and maybe people have some ideas about how to help with that. My daughter makes vinegar. It's not always successful, so if I have any expertise on that, I'd be very interested. We make sauerkraut too, and mostly preserve my food with the root cellar. The squash and everything goes into, and onions into dry, into my garage, where it's kept freezing, but much warmer and drier than the root cellar, and the freezer's full of just vegetables just popped in as they are mostly. Cider, we freeze our cider. I don't do much drying, my daughter does, and I'm here just to get new ideas, because I always learn wherever I go. It's the fun part.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
I'm Allie. I like to ferment and pickle. I would love to learn more about canning, and I'm doing my first season of vinegar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm Robin. I've never fermented anything before. I just moved from California like less than a month ago, and I'm very new to the field of sustainability. So I'm just here to listen and absorb everything. I guess I have done a little bit of, I used to make jam from like blackberries that we would just pick around my house in California, but that's my only relevant experience.
Thank you.
My name is Kay. Coming from Butte, but I've only been in Montana for a year. I actually grew up in the Philippines in a rather rural area, so I'm not familiar growing up with canning and with preserving foods. But before Montana, I lived in New England, and while I was there, I kind of fell in love with wild plants, so I did a lot of drying of herbs, made some tinctures with gold thread and some other medicinal plants. Jams, made a jam out of some currants this summer, and crab apples in the past, but really looking forward to learning more about this. I'm Japanese as well, so like my flavor palette, like really love like fermented tastes, but just really don't know a lot about the skills of how to create that. So looking forward to learning from all of you.
Hi, I'm Hadley. I'm from southern Idaho, but I've been here in Bozeman for 4 years, getting my degree in agroecology, and I've dabbled various degrees in most of these things. I'm especially passionate about fermentation, and especially about cheese making. That's kind of what I love to do, but I love all aspects of fermentation and lacto-fermented pickling. I really, what Allison said about the community aspect really resonates with me. One fun project we finally got to do this year, we've had an apple tree in our backyard that produces every other year, and every year I really want to do something with all these apples, and then, you know, I'm in school and time gets away from me and I don't, and finally all of my friends got together and found our one friend that bought an antique apple press, and we all pressed our stuff together, and he's making cider, so that's something I'm really excited to see how that turns out and learn more from him about what he's doing with that. Never tried that, so.
I'm Max. I'm from Helena.
I can't see you, Max.
I'm Max. I'm from Helena. I've started making sauerkraut. I've done some jelly beans. Not every year. And I'm getting interested in tinctures. I like that, and so I'd like to learn more the array of things you can do with tinctures. I make pesto and freeze it. I had 1 year where the sauerkraut didn't work. I put too much salt. So I'm putting that really salty sauerkraut in my soups, which works out great. So salad is difficult.
Yeah. I'm Madison. I guess kind of have a hodgepodge of experience with preserving, canning, kind of both at the farm level and then on the individual level, but I don't feel like I've ever really stuck with one strategy of preservation, and I think similar to like Mary's point, I really want to, again, close the loop in my food waste and being able to utilize fully everything that I have. And I want it to become more ingrained in kind of the preparation and cooking, and then the, preserving aspect of that, the full system.
I'm Kristen Ketchmar. As Wes mentioned, I work with Emma and Wes and a couple other people at Towns Harvest, and this is my second year of doing quite a bit of food preservation. Last year I did mostly freezing and some experimentation with sun drying in an oven, which is not the easiest. It didn't go super well, but definitely dehydration's a little bit more consistent. And then this year I really got into canning. I tried, there's one jar here of confit, which is just canning in oil. We'll see how it works. I don't know. And yeah, then relying on storage vegetables that can just hang out in my pantry and do well in cool, dry environments. I like the tincture thing and making vinegars. I haven't experimented with either of those, but that sounds really cool. I have been doing sauerkraut and kimchi for the last couple years. I'm finally getting my kimchi recipe down, which is really exciting because the flavor was not great the first couple times I made it. But yeah, I'm excited. It's cool to hear all of your experiences, and I'm excited to learn.
So I just wanted to bring up the community piece. I think that's really interesting that, we all have these endeavors and projects and things that we want to get done, whether it's in terms of policy or our work, and then we come home and we still have things that we want to do that might seem overwhelming. And so doing them together, finding a community kitchen or someone with a house and a kitchen big enough to take on a big project is definitely a great way to build community in the home, I think. And with friends and sharing the knowledge. So.
Yeah, one of the funnest things we did at Town Service Garden this season, I think, was one of the last days we were there. We all got together and had a canning party, and we canned pickles, and we made applesauce, which was really great to have all of us there, because we were able to bring our knowledge and our tools together to make it a lot faster than any of us could have done it by ourselves, I think. And we also made a lot of pesto, a lot of pesto. And that, I think, is a great way to preserve fresh basil, and then you can freeze it, which is great, because that's one thing I really miss in the wintertime is fresh herbs and stuff. Yes.
Is there any other way of preserving basil without it going bad?
I don't know. You could dry it. We were wondering about that. That's why we made pesto.
I tried to dry it and it just turns black.
Yeah.
I've heard of people putting it in ice cube trays with olive oil.
Yeah.
And just freezing it.
It's crush it or grind it up. Dry it first, or?
Fresh, you just chop it up. I've never done it, but
it works.
We've done that. I'll use safflower oil. But you have to put a cellophane or something over the top. It will darken on the top too. But the ice cream trays are perfect because you can just pop them out and use them one at a time.
Or you pop them out ahead, put them in a Ziploc, and then the ice cube trays are available.
Yeah, that's
so. And they don't turn black.
In the Ziploc?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good.
So it's exposure to air that turns it black?
I usually double bag it in freezer bags.
There's not, I don't think you're going to lose a ton of flavor. It's just the oxidation. As long as it's, it's just on the surface and it's kept cold.
So it's an ugly vegetable
situation.
Yeah,
I think more of an ugly vegetable situation. Maybe drying it more quickly would, I don't know. I haven't tried drying basil.
Yeah, how are you drying it?
Just air drying. I have tried a food dryer. I don't know. Do that.
Yeah, that'd be something to try, I guess.
It's the same problem. It must be away, you can buy it and it's not black.
Yeah, right.
I
guess they're putting something in it. I think in terms of the time efficiency, I know that a lot of us are always short on time, and drying. I've been doing a little bit of dehydrating because it's not my dehydrator, but it's in my house. And so that can be a great way to save time, is that you do a little bit of prep, stick it in the dehydrator, and it goes for like 10 hours or something, overnight. And in the morning you have something that you can just sweep into a Ziploc or store in a jar or something. So that's been another like favorite of mine lately.
Yeah. So we have an example of that this year. I borrowed Mac's dehydrator and sun-dried out. I did like 3 full dehydrators worth of these sun-boiled tomatoes that are delicious and awesome, and the flavor really gets preserved when you sun-dry them, when you dry them. But yeah, then you can just leave them in a Ziploc bag and they're totally fine. It does take quite a bit of time because they have a lot of moisture. It took about 12 to 15 hours per batch, but like you just leave it overnight. You don't really have to mess with it at all, which is really nice.
And do you do any prep beforehand or just?
Cutting them all in half.
Oh.
It took about, I would say I spent 2.5 hours total for all the batches, just slicing tomatoes. But in a community situation, that would not take nearly as long.
Yeah.
Is there a specific brand of dehydrator that people have found to be most effective?
The one that someone lets you borrow?
Yeah. I can't remember the brand. Yeah, but it's got 10 racks, so
10 racks.
Let's fill up the racks and it's really narrow,
Yeah.
So you'd have like with apple, we did apple slices. You had to slice them like pretty thin to get all 10 racks to fit in
So
there.
when you talk about sun dry, you're not really talking about putting in the sun, that kind of
Yeah,
machine. You're just
electric.
putting outside where there's lots of dry.
It's like a dehydrator.
Electric
dehydrator.
dehydrator.
And you can do meat like that too. Like I've made jerky in a dehydrator before and it was really good.
One of the temptations with tomatoes is to crank up the heat, but you're losing the nutrition when you do that. So if I've done tomatoes in a warming drawer, like for bakery items, and I made some screens out of stainless steel screen material, which you can buy from construction supply places, like in Missoula, Axman has it. And it does take a long time, but I had to remember to leave the drawer open a little bit to let the steam escape. And it probably took 2 days. But I could layer up the shelves and the temperature sat at probably about 110 max.
Yeah, I did find that for the first batch, we did pretty hot, and it took the shortest amount of time, but they were not nearly as good as the second and third batches. I did it at a low temperature for quite a bit longer, and yeah, they come out much tastier. It's worth it for the time-wise.
Are those totally dry, or is there a little bit of moisture left in there that you'd have to worry about keeping it?
So I don't know if you want to, I don't know if anyone wants to eat it, but you could pass it around to
Don't tell Dustin.
Yeah, don't tell anyone. I don't know exactly how, it's enough that it's not going to mold, but they have some chewiness to them.
Now, he just ate the one that got passed around.
You can just come fill the bag, I guess.
I have a question for those of you that have good experience with sauerkraut. I just started using the crocks with the airtight lid with the water seal, which I love. It really, there's no waste at the top. It was always molded on me. But I'm wondering about the temperature as far as fermentation. I've been putting them in my root cellar. It's about 50 degrees. Some friends of mine leave them on their kitchen table at 70. I know that goes faster, but does anyone have any suggestions or experience about the right temperature, or does it make it that much difference?
My mom makes a lot of sauerkraut, and depending on the time of year, she like puts it in different places in the house. So, like in the wintertime, she can keep it in the kitchen pantry, but like in like warmer times, she'll put it in this spare bedroom that like doesn't have heat going to it, and like put it in the closet. But my mom also uses, the crocks can be kind of expensive, so if like that's a barrier for you, she uses a 5-gallon paint bucket, and she just puts the cabbage in there, and then she puts like a plate that fits perfectly in the bucket, and then like weighs it down, and that works really well too. So, but yeah, with the temperature thing, I think you just have to, I think it helps a lot if like your cabbage is fully submerged, then you don't have to worry about it as much as like with the mold or something. But yeah, from what I've read online, you can vary the temperature and it just takes different amounts of time. But I think that would depend on what flavor you like too and how fermented you want it to be. So, I don't know.
Yeah, when I started doing it, Bob, I found they said like 2 or 3 weeks at around 70. Then the first time I did it, I just did the refrigerator thing. After 3 weeks, I stuck it in the refrigerator. It's supposed to last 6 months in a jar. But when I started doing crocks, once you've had that first, get it going, I think you could probably go in a cooler place. Probably go all winter or something. But then you have to be able to get there where you can put that water, keep that water from evaporating away.
Well, the humidity is about 96%, so it almost never evaporates. Yeah.
I think it depends on how long you want it to last, because if you're doing like a big batch of it and you want it to last all season, like 8 months, then you would want to keep it where it's colder. So I think it depends on like your goal for the batch that you have.
And if your concern is like keeping it for a long time too, you can can it, which cooks it a little bit and like probably kills some of the beneficial bacteria in it. But you could also do that and it still tastes good. So.
I really like the point about tinctures. You guys talked about a lot of things that I did not think about. I was like, all right, canning, dehydrating, freezing. But I like the point that you can turn your food into medicine and bring it into this like concentrated. I've never tried it.
I do a lot of tincturing.
Yeah. Do you have any like easy recipes or?
Honestly, it's pretty simple. You just need your herbs and then super high proof alcohol, and then it's gonna take you a long amount of time. You can keep the herbs in there, you can filter it out. Just know with tinctures, they're like super potent. I take some almost every day, but it's like half a teaspoon. Yeah.
Like a dropper in full.
So how long does it take to get done?
I would say you don't want to filter the herbs out before 2 months. Like you want to leave it in there for a while, for sure. Yeah. And sometimes with some stuff you might want to use Everclear, with other stuff you just want to use like the highest percentage vodka that you can find. So.
Do you crush the herbs or tear them in any way, damage them before you put them
in
alcohol?
Yeah, I do.
I also think it's really easy to complicate that stuff. Like you can find like ratios and you don't even have to look at that. Like you just kind of fill a jar with herbs, fill it with alcohol.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Fresh.
Fresh.
Okay. So a lot of people have brought up a lot of sort of questions that they have about a lot of things. I was thinking we could like maybe talk to the group of people around you about maybe solutions to those things, or if there was someone in the room who knows a lot about something that you were wondering about, you could approach them. So some of the topics were solar drying, drying and canning meat, storing produce in produce cellars, and concerns with white mold and ethylene, and then fermentation, cheese making, and then like what we talked about, vinegar and tinctures. So yeah, if you guys just want to talk about, talk to people around you, and that'd be great.
I just wanted to hear what each group was saying, and if you had any recipes to share, or tips, or any takeaways from your group to share with the rest of us, that would be really excellent. So starting on this side of the room this time, I'm not sure where the groups were distinguished, but this corner of people.
We just got to know each other, so.
We were
talking about cheese making, so it was our discussion.
Nice. We've both realized we would love to learn more about mushroom preservation, so if anybody has done any of that, you should come talk to us.
Joe told me I could use hydrogen peroxide to slow down the mold in my root cellar. One thing I didn't, and we had a nice list about root cellars. One thing that, I don't know, I just stumbled onto this by accident, but my root cellar is near another building. A lot of rain comes off the roof, and I've had to put a sub pump in it to keep the excess water out. But the humidity is extremely high, and my potatoes will last till July, till the new potatoes come, and so will the carrots. And so it's really, I'm 10 feet below the ground with a 3-foot soil cover. It's all cement except for the floor. Very important, the floor is dirt, although I put gravel in so I didn't track in mud for my wife. Good see. And the high humidity and the temperature range, when I put the potatoes in, will be around 46 or so in October, and it'll go down to about 35 in January, February, and then by the time July comes, when I'm emptying the greenhouse or the root cellar, it's back up in the 40s. So that's the curve. Usually I have to sprout them twice to get to July.
And does that mean you're breaking off
I'm just
the
breaking
eyes?
off the sprouts.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking about community things or grandkids? This is a great. Yeah, 'cause that's kind of important. That's
Great.
important. They'll go soft if you don't sprout them.
Oh, okay.
If you say sprout them, you need to break off.
Yeah, just break off the sprouts and prune the
So,
shoots.
well, if you don't have a root cellar, what's the best way to keep potatoes for?
Well, they like it cool and a little bit damp, not extreme, but not refrigerated. You shouldn't put them in the refrigerator, though. Starch will start to turn the sugar a little bit.
Just find a place in the house.
Yeah, in the basement, if you have a basement, or a wall of your garage that's next to the house where it doesn't freeze. They can't freeze. They don't freeze, I should say. They can freeze, but you don't want them to freeze.
Group in the back?
We talked a little bit about like making hard cider and how to avoid contamination with that. Where to send extra apples if you have a really big harvest year. But yeah, mostly just kind of getting to know each other a little bit.
Great. Folks up
We kept it a little more abstract. I guess some of us were coming from the session that was in this room right before where we were talking about statewide food plans, and so we were just thinking like, in a state like Montana, if the goal is to head toward more of a self-sufficient system, you have a 3, maybe 4-month growing season, and like this processing is going to be really important, and how do you make that happen to preserve that food for the remaining 8 months of the year? And we had no answers to that problem.
Yeah, we talked about the importance of the institutional market in playing ball with this, and the opportunity that exists in the commercial kitchens that are embedded in every community in the school district, and the timing of the institutional kitchens functioning during the school year, and how there is that gap in the summer where it could be utilized for processing.
Yeah.
And it has a couple of interesting solutions there. One, you're providing year-round employment for employees who are part of that institutional kitchen. You have a commercially certified kitchen embedded in the community already, and there is community autonomy around every school district. So I appreciate your concern about, we don't want a one-size-fits-all for how every community should do it, but if the school is a hub of, it's kind of the heartbeat of that community, so how are we using that optimally?
And they're having their own gardens more and more.
Right.
In Missoula, there's a tool library, and the tools encompass things like cider presses and some food-related stuff as well as hammers and drills and walnuts and whatnot. And thinking in terms of food security ongoing for the more urban areas, and tool libraries might be something that could be done in other towns too. I mean, I don't know what other ones exist in Montana, but the one in Missoula is really useful.
But I don't think they do have, I mean, it's mostly like construction tools and maybe.
They've got
garden
canning
tools.
kettles,
Do they?
they've got apple cider presses, they've got sewing machines, lawnmowers, concrete mixers. They've got, it's all online, and you go to mudproject.org.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that can often be a barrier to like getting the equipment just to do the activity.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know the mud project's been.
Do you know how they fund it?
Pardon?
Do you know how they fund it, or do you pay?
Memberships.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it's on a sliding scale, so depending on your income. So I think the base membership is $35 a year. And they, you know, they're like a nonprofit, so they're always soliciting funds, and they have fundraisers and various things.
And a good party once a year.
Thanks.
You folks over here?
We talked about kombucha and sourdough and just kind of our thoughts and ideas around that. And Dara moved from New York, and she was saying that when she was doing sauerkraut, the humidity and just like the elevation change kind of plays a huge part in that and ruined it. So I don't know if you want to,
Yeah, it's just like different elevations and humidity. It's been discouraging in my experience because I had a recipe that I loved, and then now my fermentation is off. But
so you need a Montana recipe.
So maybe I'll talk to some of you guys.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we just talked and got to know each other. I wanted to add on about the tool library. Portland does have like a kitchen lending program, so I think that would be like a similar thing. And I'm just really inspired by everyone's I see like a need for more community socializing in general in different places, and I see okay, people want to preserve food, it goes well doing it together, so I just see a huge opportunity in just community-based sovereignty kind of things.
And I think that also kind of addresses people's different capacities. So we were talking about how there's all these different limiting factors that you guys have brought up, who has the storage, who has the time, what your different limiting factors are for getting involved in food preservation. You said you don't have electricity, and so to get together with people to do it, together can you kind of share the success and the resources, to get rid of those limitations. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out too that the intergenerational aspect of food storage is really wonderful. You can get with your elders who remember what their grandparents taught them. And indigenous peoples too have different methods that we haven't perhaps explored.
That's a really don't can with wax on the top.
Why don't you like paraffin?
It leaks.
It's all my mother did for all our jams.
You betcha, and that's one of the dangers of using your elders.
One resource I've found is old cookbooks. I really love to collect old cookbooks, and I was telling my mom this one from 1920 or whatever has a canning section, so I need that one. And she said, be careful. She's like, there's some old techniques that are being modernized, I guess, or so I love your intergenerational consideration.
Yeah, a lot of bad ideas came out of the 20s.
Which ties directly to a question I had back here that I think I mentioned, which is, growing up, I was very drawn to the Cumberland catalog. I don't know if anybody remembers that old catalog with all these ancient tools for grinding and making butter and the whole 9 yards. But because of that, I was given a couple different books along the road, stocking up. People saw my obsession with this part of my life. What are the resources people in this room turn to aside from each other, either online or in terms of books, for a go-to, if anybody has any?
More specifically, does anybody have a really awesome fermentation or preservation cookbook?
Yes. Yeah. There's the Art of Fermentation.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
It has everything.
I can't remember his name.
And his
Sandor
Cass.
Yes.
And he wrote Wild Fermentation as well.
Yeah. Excellent book.
Can you say all those again, because we're not hearing them?
Sure. Will you say that? I don't remember the author's name.
His name? Oh, Sandor Katz. KATZ. And he's all, like his wild fermentation book, like he won't give you any measurements. It's all just like, we've been doing this forever without measuring cups, like just go do it. So it's good and bad sometimes.
Well, the art of fermentation does have specific recipes with some measurements, but he spends chapters talking about, you know, just the concept of making sauerkraut or sourdough bread or things like that. So yeah, he's wonderful. I always turn to the ag extension websites. So MSU and Iowa State University, I think they have great information.
And bulk canning, the blue book is sort of the Bible of canning, and it's got thousands of recipes in it.
And if you're really concerned about like botulism and food safety regarding canning, like the USDA has a lot of information on like research-based rules about what we should do for canning. Takes a lot of the concern away.
So there are these people in Oregon called the Shockleys, and they just wrote a book called Miso, Tempeh, Natto, and Other Tasty Ferments, a step-by-step guide to fermenting grains and beans. So if you're interested in that aspect, that's probably a good resource.
If you're looking for supplies, try to go beyond Amazon. Amazon's always first on the list, and I don't like to support them too much. But I found in looking for the fermentation jugs that the airtight seal, or the water seals, I found a place in Ohio that had the same jugs at almost half the price of Amazon. I really like to support local, even though Ohio's not local. It's more local than Amazon. So just look around a little bit.
Do you remember the name of that company?
I don't know, but I can get it for you.
Okay.
I use Bozeman Buy Sell Trade a lot, and we'll just be like, who has jars that I can buy? And I think that that's a great resource as well. And a lot of different communities have pages like that, I think.
Yeah, those, the crocks for sauerkraut are really expensive.
Yeah. I've tried to find crocks on that page and have not been successful yet, but one day they'll pop up.
So mine were 4 gallons for about 85 a piece, and Amazon they're 150.
Wow.
So, but they're and the 3 gallon, they have 3 and 4. 4 is getting a little bit heavy when you fill up with sauerkraut.
Thank you all so much for your awesome ideas and questions, and I felt like this was a really good space to share. So please continue to network and enjoy the last session. Have a good weekend. Thank you.